So, a very good afternoon to our esteemed Professor, Dr. Surendra Kumar, and to all our listeners and viewers. My name is RUDRAKSH SAKLANI, and today, on behalf of my group of fellow colleagues, YASHSVI, YASHPRIYA, ANUKRITI, ARYAN, and MEGHA, I would like to introduce our subject matter and discuss in brief as to how we plan to approach it. Our topic of discussion shall revolve around the first two voyages of the man who redefined the limits of navigation and the spirit of exploration, Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus was a European sea mariner, navigator, and an explorer who is famously known for his voyages across the Atlantic Ocean and also for the discovery of the Americas in the last decade of the 15th century. He gave way to future European expeditions and the eventual conquest and colonization of the Americas. Born in Genoa, Republic of Genoa, in modern day Italy, in 1451, he's had a major role to play as far as the Europeans viewing the original inhabitants of the New World is concerned. The indigenous populations have had a remarkable role, and his interactions with them adds to that. Amidst all the speculations, myths, exaggerations, and estimations, it's been noted that various historians, geologists, and other explorers have also made certain observations regarding his impact and the general impact of this transatlantic interaction on the history of humankind. Our aims, intentions, and objectives are such that we intend to discuss these voyages amongst ourselves and thereby collectively present multiple viewpoints, perspectives, aspects of these voyages, while also attempt to make a sincere and a thorough comparative analysis between the two. Over to you, Yashasvi.
And thank you, Rudraksh. So, by the 13th and 14th century, there were many theories around the shape of the world. So, there were many Greek cosmographers who suggested that the world is fair and it is possible to go east by sailing west. This idea came into Columbus' mind also, and he was in continuous talks with a cosmographer, Paolo Toscalani, who was from Florence, and they exchanged some letters, and finally he sent Christopher Columbus a map. Now, it is interesting to note here that Columbus used to believe only 2,760 miles, which is actually more than 12,000 miles. Now, Captain Oviedo, who was a botanist, naturalist, historian, and also a soldier, wrote a book named General and Natural History of the Indies, which was published in the translated version 1941. According to Oviedo, Christopher Columbus was the first person in Spain who taught the skill of navigating and measuring the height of the degrees of sun and using these scientific methods to navigate the wide oceans. So, completely charged by his idea of discovery and with the confidence on his navigating skills, Columbus now decided to seek support for his explorations. First of all, he went to the King of England, Henry VII. He offered this proposal to him, but the king laughed at his idea and called it complete nonsense. He then went to King John II of Portugal, but he also rejected his idea because he put no trust in him. After that, he went to some dukes here and there, to Castile, to Medina, but for one or the other reason, he didn't receive any success. Columbus thus decided to go to what Oviedo called the highest Catholic majesties, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain. Like others, they were also very unpleased by this idea, but Columbus worked in their court for 7 years and he finally gained their trust. So, in between the war against the Moors of Kingdom Granada, from the royal camp of Santa Fe, the agreement between the royal majesties and Columbus was concluded. The first grant was signed and sanctioned on 18th April 1492, followed by a royal appointment on 13th April, where the final agreement was made. And thus, Christopher went to the city of Palos de Moguer to prepare for his first voyage. On 3rd August 1492, Christopher Columbus began his first voyage along with 92 to 94 crewmen, and his three ships were the Santa Maria, the Nia, the Penta. Thank you. And over to
So
Anuriti.
on 3rd August, which was Friday, Columbus departed from city of Granda. For Canary Island, he was very careful in writing his daily experience and also decided to write a book for further information for sailors. He arrived at Grand Canary Island with defective Pinta and repaired it there. And reached Gomera of Tenerife from there. They collected some provisions and sailed again. From there, they sailed for 1 week. According to the writer, he covered more distance and reckoned less for the others men on the boat, but kept proper calculation with him as it was like a tradition, so that their morale should be boosted. So after 1 week, crew of Nina said that they saw a tropical bird, and after 3 days, they started observing the beads and the birds, which was a sign that they were very near to the land. After some days, the admiral was discussing a map of the island, and at that point, the captain of the Pinta ship, Martin Alonso, announced that he sighted the land. Columbus delightfully fell on his knees and then he thanked God. But in morning, they found out that it was not land but only clouds. So after traveling for another week, he felt that they had passed the island which he was searching on the map, but he later on found that no, it is really long, like it's a way long there. Then, so all the ships were traveling faster as they wanted to secure the reward promised by the sovereigns. So, according to the text, Lena in the evening of 7 October saw the land and gave the signal to by firing a Lombard. The first man to sight the land was sailor called Rodrigo from Triana, who afterwards vainly claimed the reward that was pocketed by Columbus. Again, they sailed for 3 days in that direction. At this point, the men also started complaining about the length of the voyage, but the admiral encouraged them anyhow. Then another day, they saw a cane and stick which was shaped like an iron tool, and the same day, Pinta ship also gave the signal that they sighted land. So on 11 October, they saw a light which was like a wax candle type, and then after 2 hours past midnight, they finally saw the land, which was Friday, 12 October. They reached a small island of Lucaso, called in the Indian language Guhana Hani, something like that. Immediately the natives appeared. The admiral and his men also got afraid by like what they were all naked. So the admiral raised the royal standards, and the captains carried two banners with the green cross, which were flown by the admiral on all his ships. On each side of the cross was a crown surmounting the letters F and Y for Ferdinand and Isabella, the sovereigns. The then Columbus met those people and gave them caps and glasses. Like they exchanged several things. They gave them crockery, piece of crockery, which they happily accepted from them. They exchanged parrots, glasses, bell hawks, and several things. Columbus described their appearances. They had fine bodies, and I get remember they had like horse-like hairs. Some had painted their face. He described them as gentle. They didn't know about iron and swords. He examined the islands by taking a round of them. He saw several new fruits and spices, but he didn't recognize any of them. He was taken away by the scenic beauty and the greed of the islands, and was convinced these islands were most fertile one in the whole world. They searched for gold and other precious metal, but there he didn't find anything. Then he again sailed in the southwest direction and encountered some more islands and people who were thanking God that they had met the people who had came from the skies. Some natives accompanied them and provided information about the different islands. After some days, Columbus founded an island to build a fort there and named it Santa Maria de la Conception, something like this type of name. Another island that he found beautiful was Semoit, which he named after the sovereign, like Isabella. But he was still determined to go to the city of Quince, where he heard the gold story about that the king of Quince had hoards of gold and all that, to deliver Isabella's letter to the Grand Khan, who was the king of that Islam, and request his answer, which he shall bring back to the to the queen. And according to him, the natives don't have any religion, so they can be easily Christianized. Columbus described the houses, their houses. They were like tents, and he described the trees, fish, animals, and everything of that area. Yashashvi, to you
So
now.
before Yashasvi begins, I had a question for Anukriti. Anukriti, could you
Yes.
please shed some light on how did the natives react when they saw the admiral and his men approaching the shores?
So there were very different reaction. Like some of them were very happy and thanking God that they have so like to like when they saw Europeans, they were very happy and thanking God as they believed that the admiral and his men had have landed from the sky. But on the other hand, like as soon as the inhabitants saw them, they were running away from them as by leaving their houses, and they were like hiding their clothing and all that they had in the undergrowth. Like some of them were accepting them and some of them were very happy, but at the same time some of them were very fearful of them. Like they were like aliens to them.
Well, so by the end of October, Columbus reached Cuba, which was then called Colba. Now, it's a well known fact that Columbus thought it to be the mainland Asia, and he was very happy that he has finally landed on the mainland Asia. One Indian from the ship and another place and discovered the character of the place, the people. The four people, when returned, they told that they had found a village of more than 50 houses. There are more than thousands of inhabitants here, and just as Anukriti now mentioned that the Indians of Cuba were reacting like they had found they are meeting some people who had come from sky. So there are some angelic people, and they were treating them with utmost respect and humility. They were greeting them, they were carrying them on their shoulders, and they were also offering them meals. Now, there were some common observations made by the Spaniards about these natives, like they eat herbs by cooking them with the help of coal. There were fields of staple root, there were fields of kidney beans and another grain, uh, which they found like panic like grass, and it was maize. The Indians suggested them to go to east in a land called Bohio or Baby in order to find gold or cotton, pearls, or for that matter, spices. The voyage now began to sail through the coast of Cuba, and finally they had to pass the Windward Passage to reach what we now known as the voyage now, sorry, just I mentioned the voyage now began to go east, but in the middle of it, Captain Pinzon of the Pinta. Now, according to Hernando, he became somewhat greedy and he went on his own. He, separated from the main group because he was tired of sailing tirelessly from one place to another without any conclusive results. So he separated from the group, and Hernando, the son of Christopher Columbus, and Christopher Columbus himself was very upset about this deliberate move. Having sailed for more than 122 leagues, Columbus now came to a harbor which he named Conception. Now, this place, according to Hernando, Columbus saw a lot of similarities between this place and Spain. So he decided to give this place a name related to Spain only, and he called it Hispaniola. Hernando provides us with an account of an unusual encounter here. So there is a mention of a king whose village was about 5 leagues from this spot, but he was on a visit on the village near to the coast. So the people from the crew were somewhat nervous about like a king is coming with his full group of 200 men, but they noticed that it was not some kind of attack, but a ceremonial procession. So the king was even eager to meet these people who were claiming that they had came from sky. So the king was invited on the ship. He had a meet with Columbus. They meet over lunch table. King was especially very kind, very excited, and very open towards the admiral. In the next few days, one of Columbus' ship got into a major accident. Now, due to the negligence of the steersman of the Santa Maria sailed into a reef and was almost damaged. Now, the admiral was left with only one ship, the Nia. Hernando remarkably mentioned that when the king was informed of this loss, he was deeply sorrowed by this loss of the admiral, and he also offered great help. Most of the inhabitants of the village went out to the ship, and within a very short span of time, the ship was unloaded and the decks were cleared. Now, this help from the king was something which deeply touched Columbus' heart, and therefore he decided to make a settlement here. Rudraksh, you can continue from here.
Yeah, so taking it forward from where Yashasvi left, it is important for us to first of all realize that Ferdinand Columbus, also known as Hernando Colon, son of Christopher Columbus, wrote in his book The Life of the Admiral uh, about in great detail and at great depth about the voyages of Christopher Columbus and his experiences uh, over water, and his experiences in the high seas with all the storms and with all the journeys including. So the admiral took a decision to make a settlement called La Navidad in Hispaniola in December 1492. A ship arrived with Indians from another island, bringing gold to barter for bells. The Indians, in fact, invited the admiral to a feast of sweet potatoes and yucca, a local food, and gave him masks of gold. The admiral believed that God had allowed the ship to be wrecked to make a settlement and leave some Christians behind so that they could trade and also gather information about not just the island but also its inhabitants, the natives. He decided to construct a fort from the timbers of the wrecked ship. On December 27th, the caravel Pinta was found in the river. The admiral left Pedro and Rodrigo in command of the fort. He prepared for a direct return journey to Castile, deciding not to make any further explorations due to the wreckage of the ship. The admiral left the Christian settlement on January 4th, 1493, raising sail to avoid rocks and shoals off the coast of Santa Barbara. After that, the admiral headed for Monte Cristi, a tall, renowned mountain in the region. On 6th of January 1493, the caravel Pinta was sighted sailing westwards. Captain Martin Alonso Pinzon, who had left the admiral in Cuba, returned to Hispaniola, where he had acquired much gold by exchanging it for small articles of value. On 13 January 1493, in the Gulf of Samana in Hispaniola, the admiral's men encountered fierce-looking Indians with yew bows and arrows made from cane shoots, which were sharpened and hardened in fire. The Indians
They
proudly
were
spoke in the
speaking
native
in
language.
native only, yeah. They were speaking their native language only. Like they were very proud of just speaking their native.
Correct. So they proudly spoke their native language, and a violent skirmish took place thereafter. The encounter led to the discovery of the Indians' strong weapons and the importance of respecting and valuing their culture. On 16 January 1493, the admiral and his caravels set sail for Castile, but faced difficulties due to storms, sea storms. The Pinta, less able to withstand the seas than the Nina, due to darkness, the Pinta could not rejoin the admiral, and the two ships lost contact with one another for a brief period of time. The storm intensified. Upon approaching the shores of Azore, the admiral saw horsemen dismounting and attacking the caravan. The admiral ordered his men to take up their positions and weapons, allowing the Portuguese to approach boldly. The admiral offered to show the Portuguese captain his appointment, signed in their royal names and sealed with their seals. After a night of hard work and danger, the admiral returned to Santa Maria to rescue his crew, anchors, and boat. On 24th February 1493, the admiral and crew sailed for Castile from Santa Maria. This time around, they arrived on the coast of Kingdom of Portugal successfully. On 5th of March 1493, upon his arrival to Lisbon, the capital of the Kingdom of Portugal, many people visited the caravel to see the Indians he had brought back. The King of Portugal invited the admiral to his court, to the royal court, where he was warmly welcomed. The admiral stayed there for 2 days before taking leave, receiving support from the king and other noblemen. On 13th March, the admiral set sail for Seville and later anchored in Palos Harbour, where he was received by the citizens who were delighted to see him and his men. The admiral arrived in Barcelona only in mid-April 1493, wherein the Catholic sovereigns greeted him with great reception. From the two letters written by Columbus while he was in the caravan off the Canary Islands in February 1493, we get to know of the outcomes of his first voyage and also the experience of the return journey. Equally important. Their critical analysis tells us that the Spanish explorer discovered Hispaniola, a fertile island with diverse wildlife. He even got a fort constructed on the island. The islands which he discovered were rich in resources and had a strong population of well built people. He encouraged and inspired the local kings over there to convert to Christianity, benefiting not just Spain but also the entire Christendom. Amidst all the sea storms, disagreements within the crew, misunderstandings, challenges and opportunities with respect to the locals' hostility and alienation, and lack of trust in the initial phases, the curiosity and the quest for greener pastures reigned supreme for Columbus and his men. However, it is important for us to keep in mind that while Columbus's first voyage in 1492 was intended to reach Asia via a westward route, but he unintentionally ended up discovering the Americas. His second voyage from 1493 till 1496, funded by Spain, had a much larger fleet and aimed to establish colonies, initiating European colonization of the New World. He was more aware and better prepared this time around.
Okay. So the second voyage opens up with the letter of Dr. Chansa. This letter by Dr. Chansa is the literal account of the Columbus second voyage and the permission he was again granted to go to Hispaniola. Basically, this time with the legitimation of the Pope, Alexander V. And this was given because they acknowledged his labors and initiative, reinforcing the idea that without his voyage and the extent of their potential colonial empire would not have been revealed. So this provided for the confirmation of his second voyage and his titles of Admiral, Viceroy, and Governor. Dr. Chansa, the physician to the Spanish fleet on Columbus' second voyage, wrote a detailed letter describing the expedition, focus on the newly discovered Caribbean islands, their inhabitants, flora and fauna, and also about the meticulous record. He dates the navigational routes, weather, and the condition and the duration of various stages of the voyages. The major theme of the Chansa's letter is the rumored existence of fearsome cannibals inhabiting the Carib Island. This was the second island they landed on. Though the presence of skulls and bones and the presence of women more than men and their conversation with the natives led them to believe that it was the Carib land islands and the most of the men had gone on raiding. He vividly described their alleged raiding practices, citing indirect evidence from peaceful Taino people that the Caribs attacked their villages to take women and children as captives and source of food. These accounts, while sensational, need context. Scholars debate that the extent of Carib cannibalism, with some suggesting that the Spanish exaggerated such stories to demonize them. Even Dr. Chansa has described their appearances, that they have painted their brows and braided their hair, and they are beastly in their eating habits, like they eat anything which come up to them, and the stewing of bones and a skull in a pot, which was identified there. Especially describes how Chansa visualized their deeply rooted culture into something very beastly and demonized. Chansa's description of the Caribbean islands, flora and fauna, reveal both a sense of wonder and an undercurrent of pragmatism. He details unfamiliar plants like yams and peppers, observing their use by the indigenous inhabitants. This suggests an interest in potential resource the island could offer Spain. His phrases from the letter, like there is an infinite amount of cotton available here, and the wax, trees, turpentine, they all show the potential that these islands offer to the Spain. However, Chansa struggles to classify and understand the environment using his European knowledge base, because he was not a very experienced botanist or an environmentalist. He was just a doctor on the fleet. So he repeatedly falls back on comparison: fruits that look like familiar European ones but taste different. This highlights the limitation of the European scientific worldview when encountering these diverse ecosystem of the Americas. The letter offers a detailed yet deeply flawed ethnographic account of the Taino people, the most widespread indigenous group in the Caribbean at the time. Chansa described their physical appearances, like he even mocked the women for their dressing up and their hairdos and the makeup. He compared them with the madmen in the Europe, like the way they shave their head and cover their face with white powder. He compared them with the madmen, And their diet, like I've already described, that he told that they can eat any snake, lizard, or anything which is found there on the island without even thinking once. They were so beastly and demonized.
Thank you,
And
Megha.
am I
Uh,
back? Sorry, there
the
was
admiral fell ill and
the admiral
what?
didn't fell ill. Oh, sorry. There was some network issue. I'm really very sorry. Can I continue, Aryan?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay. And their social organization and customs. He notes their relative peacefulness and apart lack of organized religion. He even wrote that they could be easily converted into Christianity. And there was one line he used that they begged, they all say they wish to be Christians. Like without even talking to them, he just noted it there, pre-assumed that they all are ready to be Christianized. Um, and
According
later,
to him, they don't have any religion actually. So he felt that they
no,
can be
these
easily Christians
people,
because they don't possess any religion.
no, actually, these people had a religion. They used some clay models,
They
and
had, but he thought that they don't have any. Like he thought that they don't possess it. They have.
in this letter, he was there that they had a religion which is very idolatry, like
Yeah,
use
yeah, yeah.
idols to worship. And once he even shared an incident where he burnt one of the idols, and they became very upset, and they even cried for that. So they were very sentimental about it. And then he presumed that they could be easily converted to Christianity. So there was it. And the description, however, reflect a fundamental misunderstanding of Taino culture, which was always there because of the pre-assumptions, like these lands they can own. And there was one more thing which was there in the letter. It was an excerpt in the letter which highlights the sexual exploitation of the women, and it was vehemently stated by an Italian writer, which was Michele di Canao, and he normalized the raping act. Like there was the statement, when I went for the sexual pleasures, she resisted, and then I took a rope and hit her with that, lashed with the rope, and she made some sounds which were like she was in the school for whores and something like that. So he basically normalized the act of rape. And even in some of the documents which I later explored, he this was the first like official rapist. He was claimed as the first official rapist in the counts. So that was it. And uh, furthermore, Chansard's description are marked as an underlying assumption of the European superiority, and often famed the Tiano as the potential subject to the Spanish crown. And the last but not the least, because the second voyage was all about to go back to Hispaniola, where they have left their crew soldiers earlier in the first voyage. So they went back, and he precisely, like vividly described how unworthy these people are, because he left his they have left their 11 men, and there was nothing when they went back. They all were killed. However, the ruler over there, the Gyukamari, he claimed that he didn't do anything, and he was also injured. It was some other people from the other islands, but on inspecting and after investigating, they found that Gyukamari was like it was all charade, and he was faking it. There was no injury on his knee. And but again, the admiral, after, like, he trusted him and he invited him over the dinner, but Gyuga Mari again failed his trust, and he took over the women from the ship to the island, and they all ran away. So this whole scenario was framed against these native people to make them like they are very untrusty and unworthy of trust, so they should be slaved. This was the main theme of enslavement that runs through the letter. Chansal notes that the gentle and the timid nature of the Tiano, and comments that they would make good and easily converted servants. And apart from that, the main theme which lured, like it was on every page, that gold must take a scene in every page. Like there was this much gold, there was that much gold, they offered us gold, because this was the whole conspiracy which would lead their expedition further. And even one of the writers, his name is one second, I have to just search for it. Yeah, I've gone to some other documents as well, and the book of by Todorov and his book The Conquest of America, The Question of the Other, he precisely clearly write that it was the lure that Columbus offered to the monarch would agree to finance him. The gold was always the lure that Columbus offered, because every time they have discovered gold somewhere, there was an issue. Either the soldiers fell ill, or they were the climate was not good, so they never went to explore it. And finally, he sent like two boats to two islands named Cario and Niti. Yeah, Kibao and Niti, and there they found they described it so splendorously, like you can see gold everywhere in the rivers, on the mountains, you can get it as much gold as you want. And the ending of the letter, that Chansa end his letter with the promise that when we return on the next voyage, for the next voyage, he's already framing uh, putting the foundation for the next expedition, that when we go to the next voyage, we ensure that you will be the richest man on the earth, our imperial, and there will be as much converts for Christianity as you want, so fulfilling both the imperial and the divine mission. And to look it from the critical aspect, the letter primarily served the interest of the Spanish crown, painting a picture of the island ripe for exploitation and inhabitants seemingly easy to subjugate. That's all from my side.
In the first voyage also, that admiral was searching
Thank
for the gold nose ring that the people would have wear, so that he can trace from where the gold has come, he can go there.
And isn't it very colonial mindset that whatever isn't the like the concept of their civilization, it is beastly, it needs to be civilized, or these kind of things.
And there was one more thing. I have read it somewhere, like the parrots and the gold. They were always seen as something very valuable. Like if you find some parrots, because there was one instant when they took two parrots from somewhere, and
Yeah, yeah, they were
so they are
exchanging.
always the lures to keep their expedition going on. But they found nothing. We know that.
Okay, let's restart. Thank you, Megha. Uh, just I am discussing my point. The admiral fell ill and sent Alonso de Ojeda with 14 men to search for gold fields in Caibo. After arriving, he decided to land and examine the country. He left Isabela for Caibo with all his fit men, leaving a good guard on the ships and three carvels. To intimidate the Indians, he took all the Spaniard he could. As a display of his might, he drew up his men in military formations as if he marching to war. Fully armed with trumpets, soundings, and banners displayed, he passed through many Indian villages with round houses attached with straw and encountered many fortified houses. The Indian who had received news of Christianity from Ojeda received present foods and gold grains from the Indians. The admiral ordered the construction of a fort called St. Thomas, intended to dominate the gold fields and provided safety for Christianity. He stationed Pedro Margaret and 56 men who were exporting all craft necessary for the constructions. The fort was built of earth and timbers, filled with nests, but made of clay and straw, containing cannon balls. On April 1st, Pedro Margaret from St. Thomas sent news that the Indians were fleeing from their villages and that a Kaku called Canobo was preparing to burn the fort. As a precaution, he sent 70 men to fort with food and munitions, 25 for defense, and the rest for the constructions of a new road. Ojeda left Isabola on April 9, taking over the fort with over 400 men. He formed a council to govern the island of Tortuga, involving his brother Don Diego Colon as president, Father Buell and Pedro Hernandez Cornell as regent, Alfonso Sánchez de Carvajal as a magistrate, and Juan de Luzon as a gentleman of Madrid. The admiral, exhausted from poor food and sleeplessness, embarked on a voyage to Hispaniola, encountering numerous islands and shallows. He encountered scarlet cranes, parrots, birds, dogs, and weeds, and often ran around He landed on Santa Marta, a larger island with no Indian or Christian. They continued westward, encountering houses on the beach where cannons brought water and food to the Christians. One Indian decided the ship and promised to be forced if he showed the Spaniards their codes and information about the country. On 11 June, the admiral had to tow the ship over a sandbanks to bring it in the deeper channels. The saw turtles, birds, doves, and butterflies which stayed on the ship throughout the day, but were dispersed by rain at night. The admiral decided to return to Hispaniola and the town he had left, anchoring in the Isla de Evangelista to stock himself with water and firewood. He sailed southward, encountering green and white patches and cloudy seas. Eventually reaching Cuba on 16 July, he left Hispaniola for Cabo de la Cruz in Cuba, where he faced food shortage due to the perishable nature of the region. Thank you.
Should I go? Okay, so I'll be discussing the ending of the second voyage. So on Wednesday, 28th August 1494, Admiral sighted the western point of Hispaniola. At this cape, September 23rd August, Kasi came to the boats and he hailed Admiral's name by his name. So this which proved that the place was part of Hispaniola. As they continued on their voyage, they saw a fish as big as whale with a large shell on its back. By the presence of this fish and other signs, Admiral judged that the weather was about to change. So they began to look for a harbor in which to take refuge. On 15th September, he sighted an island lying off the eastern coast of Hispaniola and San Juan, which the Indians call Adamana. From this point, the admiral ceased to record the voyage in his logbook because he was afflicted by a serious illness. Seeing this, they decided to return to Isabella, which they reached in 5 days. When he came back, he found his brother in this island, so he made him governor of Indies. Here, Columbus found all the Indians in revolt. So, which is because of Pedro Marget. He was the man that Admiral himself gave command of this island. But he left without waiting for Admiral. He returned to home. As a result, Spaniards started robbing and seizing Indian women. Therefore, Indians decided to take revenge, and they started killing the Christians. So when the admiral came back, he found the island in the bad state. So one more thing, there were so many rulers were like friendly also. So there is one ruler whose name is Guacanagari. I'm not sure about the pronunciation. So he told Admiral that he always helped Christians he always helped Christians in whatever possibility. For this reason, rest of the Caciques were hostile to him. He even asked for help to Admiral. So on 24th March 1494, Admiral left Isabella, prepared for war with his ally Guacanagari, whom I just told you about. So Admiral divided the army into two parts to attack from two different directions. Subsequently, they won the war, and then they all promised to pay the tribute to Catholic servants every 3 months. So this is how they pacified and controlled the island. When the people of this island had been pacified, other facts were also discovered, like they were like ebony, the Brazil wood, and many more trees they discovered. And other than that, they also learned about the customs, their religion. So they took. So even Admiral himself talked about their temples that contained wooden images carved in relief and called by them semis. So they took pride in their semis and compared them to other semis. They also had the fear that the Christians will take their semis He also mentioned about their funeral rites. So there were different ways for different people. Like if you talk about Kasi, so they used to cut their body and they dry it over the fire so they can preserve whole and like entire body. And for normal people, they only they only used to preserve head. So some of them they strangle and some they carry out and place in hammocks with bread and water besides. And if somebody is sick, then they take them to Kasik to decide whether they should be strangled or not. So moving on the 10th March 1496, the admiral embarked with 224 Christians and 30 Indians from the port of Isabella in two caravels, the Santa Cruz and the Nia. On the 6th April, he found himself very short of provisions and his crew depressed and exhausted. So they then decided to turn south and make for the Carib Island. So they went to Guadalupe Island, but before they arrived, several women came out of the woods with arrows and bows and attacked. So though they negotiated with them and asked for food, after that women suggested that they can ask their men folks for the help. But when they reached there to their men folks, they attacked them. But they were forced to retire and abandon their houses and possessions. So after this, they took adequate supplies of food from this island, and even after that, by the end of May, they begin to run short of food. But the admiral was quite certain that they were about to reach. Finally, on 8 June, they sighted Odemira, which is between Lisbon and Cape St. Vincent. So this is how they completed their journey. In conclusion, I would say we are concluding both the voyages. So the first and second voyages of Christopher Columbus represent significant chapters in the age of exploration. Columbus's encounters with indigenous people, discoveries of new land, and the establishment of transatlantic trade route laid the foundation for centuries of cultural exchange and colonization and conflict. The legacy of these voyages continue to shape our understanding of global history, sparking ongoing discussion about exploration, imperialism, and the impact on indigenous societies. By reflecting on the achievement and challenges of Columbus's expedition, we gain insight into the complexities of early modern exploration and its enduring significance in shaping the modern world. So, yeah, thank you.